My beloved child. In the hour when all light had fled, Lucas stood alone amid the ruins of his former life. Grief clung to him like a shadow that would not loosen its grip, for those he loved were gone, and with them, the faith he once carried so fiercely. The night was still unnaturally so, until a voice, gentle yet sovereign, pierced the silence. "I am still here." His breath faltered. No form stood before him, no figure in the dark, only that presence, vast and unseen. Was it madness born of sorrow, or something eternal reaching through the veil? How is your child's health today? Please share in the comments so we can all pray for each other. Lucas did not sleep that night, nor the nights that followed. The voice lingered not as an echo in the air, but as a quiet authority within his thoughts, as though something ancient had taken residence where despair once ruled. He wrestled with himself in the silence. Was it truly God, he murmured, or merely the fragile mind of a broken man seeking comfort in illusion? His reason rose like a stern judge, demanding proof, while something deeper, quieter, yet unyielding whispered that truth does not always arrive clothed in certainty. In the days that followed, the ordinary began to fracture. A dream came to him, vivid as waking life, a path lit by a distant, unwavering light, and though he could not see the one who walked ahead, he felt known completely and without condition. He awoke with tears upon his face, not of sorrow, but of something he could not name. Then came the small and unsettling coincidences. Words he had only thought were spoken aloud by strangers. A passage of scripture, long forgotten, appeared before him at the precise moment his doubt reached its height. Even the wind seemed to carry meaning, stirring at moments too precise to dismiss. Lucas resisted, clinging to logic as a drowning man clings to driftwood. Yet the more he denied it, the more the unseen pressed gently against the edges of his understanding. He was not a man given to fantasy. Once, he had been steadfast, disciplined, anchored in both reason and faith. And it was this very dignity, this refusal to yield easily, that deepened the conflict within him. For if this was truth, it demanded everything. And if it was not, then he stood at the edge of losing himself entirely. The days unfolded with a quiet strangeness Lucas could neither dismiss nor fully embrace. What first appeared as coincidence soon gathered weight, as though an unseen hand arranged the smallest details of his path. He would form a thought unspoken, fleeting, and moments later, hear it echoed from the lips of another. Once, while standing in a crowded street burdened by a question he dared not utter, a stranger brushed past him and said, without turning, "You are not abandoned." The words struck him with a force that halted his breath. He turned, but the man was gone, swallowed by the ordinary movement of the world, leaving behind only a trembling certainty that something beyond chance had transpired. Lucas, a man once governed by reason and measured judgment, found himself unsettled not by fear, but by the precision of these moments. They were too exact, too intimate, as if they reached into the hidden chambers of his soul and answered what he had not yet dared to speak aloud. At night, the dreams returned clearer now, more deliberate. He walked again along that narrow path, the distant light drawing nearer, its presence neither blinding nor distant, but patient, waiting. There was no voice this time, yet he understood, in a manner beyond language, that he was being led. Still, he resisted naming it. His mind sought refuge in logic, constructing explanations where none could fully stand. And yet, beneath that effort, something in him, something ancient and unbroken, began to awaken. "There is something guiding me," he whispered at last, not in surrender, but in cautious recognition. It was not yet faith, but neither was it doubt. It was the threshold between the two, and Lucas now stood upon it. Night gathered like a solemn veil, and Lucas returned to the place where silence seemed to listen. He did not kneel, nor did he pray as he once had. Instead, he stood upright, as one who would not surrender his reason without answer. The presence came again, not in form, but in a stillness that carried weight, as though eternity itself leaned near. "Then speak," Lucas said into the dark, his voice steady though his soul trembled. "If you are truly there, if you are who you claim to be, tell me why I have suffered. Why was everything taken from me?" His words did not break. They were sharpened by grief, honed by loss. What justice is there in silence? What love permits such ruin? For a moment, there was nothing, only the vast quiet. Then, not as sound, but as knowing, the answer came, gentle yet unyielding. You measure love by the absence of pain. I measure it by my presence within it. Lucas clenched his hands. That is not enough, he replied. A man cannot live on riddles and unseen comfort. I needed protection. I need you. His defiance was not born of arrogance, but of a dignity that refused to accept easy consolation. And yet, the presence answered, you still stand. The word struck deeper than any explanation. Not an argument, but a truth. Lucas felt it, an unsettling clarity that did not erase his suffering, yet refused to be denied. The debate did not end, it deepened. His mind resisted, demanding reason, while his spirit, quiet, ancient, and strangely resolute, began to recognize something beyond proof. In that moment, Lucas understood. He was not arguing with silence. He was standing before something that would not force belief, yet would not release him either. The revelation did not arrive with thunder, but with the slow, undeniable weight of truth. Lucas began to see what he had once refused to name. Faces he had trusted now turned distant, their words hollow, their loyalty as fragile as glass. Friends who once stood beside him withdrew when his burdens grew too heavy to share. Even those bound to him by blood spoke with careful distance, as though his sorrow were a contagion best avoided. At first, he resisted the conclusion, for his heart had been shaped to believe in constancy, in the quiet covenant of human bonds. Yet the pattern revealed itself with a clarity too precise to ignore. It was not cruelty alone that wounded him, but the frailty of those he had believed unshakable. They were not evil, only limited, bound by fear, by self-preservation, by the narrow measure of their own strength. Lucas walked among them still, but something within him had shifted. The world had not changed, he had. The illusions fell away, not in bitterness, but in a solemn understanding. Man cannot carry what only the eternal was meant to bear. He spoke quietly, the words rising not from despair, but from awakening. The fracture within him deepened, yet it did not destroy him. It refined him. His grief, once scattered and chaotic, now took form, pressing him toward a truth he could no longer evade. What he had placed upon others, the weight of meaning, of security, of ultimate trust, had never belonged to them. And in that breaking there was a strange and sacred beginning. For when the last illusion shattered, it left behind not emptiness, but space, a space vast enough for something greater to enter. The night of revelation came without herald, as though it had long been appointed and simply arrived on its hour. Lucas, worn by the weight of his reckonings, lay in a half-waking stillness when the boundary between dream and waking dissolved. What opened before him was neither holy vision nor imagination, but a realm suffused with a quiet, sovereign light, gentle, yet immeasurably vast. He stood upon a plain that seemed endless, yet not empty. The air itself carried meaning, as though every breath held a fragment of truth too great for words. Before him, a light emerged, not blinding, but living, as though it knew him. It did not approach, yet it was near. It did not speak, yet he understood. You were not preserved without purpose. The words were not heard, but received inscribed upon his very being. Around him, forms began to take shape, symbols both ancient and unfamiliar, woven of light and shadow. A path revealed itself beneath his feet, narrow and unbroken, stretching toward a horizon that seemed both distant and already within reach. He saw glimpses fleeting, yet unmistakable, of moments not yet lived. Faces he had never known, lands he had never walked, and hands reaching toward him in need. Lucas felt the stirring of something he had long buried, a sense of calling, solemn and undeniable. Yet with it came fear, sharp and immediate. "Why me?" he asked, his voice small against the vastness. "I am not worthy. I am not strong enough." The light did not waver. "It is not your strength that is required." A warmth, steady and unyielding, passed through him, as though something eternal acknowledged his frailty without diminishing his place within it. He saw then not clearly, but enough that his brokenness had not disqualified him. It had prepared him. The vision shifted. The plain gave way to darkness once more, yet the light remained not before him, but within. He awoke, breath unsteady, his heart bearing the imprint of what he had seen. The room was as it had always been, silent and unchanged, yet nothing within him was the same. Lucas rose slowly, as one who carries a revelation too great to deny, yet too heavy to fully accept. Faith had begun to take root, fragile yet persistent, but fear lingered still, whispering of the cost of the unknown road ahead. He stood at the threshold not of certainty, but of surrender. And though he trembled, he did not turn away. The days that followed were not crowned with light, but shadowed by a trial more subtle and more severe than any vision. What had been revealed to Lucas did not lift him above the world, it placed him directly within its resistance. The echoes of his past rose against him, familiar and persuasive. Old fears returned, cloaked in reason. Old habits whispered with a voice that knew his weaknesses well. And those around him, once silent, now spoke with unsettling certainty. "You've lost yourself," they said. "Grief has broken your mind. There is no voice, only your imagination. Return to what is real before you go too far." Their words were not shouted, but spoken with calm conviction, which made them all the more dangerous. For they appealed not to his emotion, but to his reason, the very ground upon which he had once stood unshaken. Lucas listened, not as a fool, but as a man who weighed every claim. And for a moment, brief but piercing doubt surged within him like a returning tide. What if they were right? The question did not come as rebellion, but as fear of error. To believe falsely would be to abandon truth itself, and Lucas was not a man who could live in illusion. He withdrew into silence, stepping away from voices both human and unseen, seeking clarity in the stillness. Yet even there, the conflict followed him. At night, the dreams returned, but now they contended with darker visions, fractured paths, voices that mimicked truth, yet led to emptiness, shadows that spoke in tones nearly indistinguishable from light. He could no longer rely on sensation alone. He was being forced to discern, not merely to feel, and so the trial revealed its true nature. It was not a battle of voices, but of allegiance. One path offered safety, familiarity, and the quiet acceptance of the world. It required only that he deny what he could not fully prove. The other path, narrow, uncertain, yet illuminated from within, demanded something greater: trust without guarantee, obedience without complete understanding. Lucas stood between them, neither blind nor naive. His fear did not make him weak. It made his choice real. He knew now that this was no fleeting experience, no passing disturbance of the mind. It was a call, one that would not release him, whether he answered it or not. "I will not follow madness," he said at last, his voice steady despite the storm within. "But neither will I deny what has been shown to me." There was no immediate answer, no sign to resolve the tension, only silence deep, watchful, waiting. And in that silence, Lucas made his stand, not in certainty, but in resolve. The fall did not come as a single blow, but as a quiet surrender, almost unnoticed until it was complete. Wearied by the unrelenting tension between doubt and belief, Lucas chose, if only for a moment, to turn away. He silenced the inward voice, dismissed the signs, and returned to what could be measured, explained, and controlled. It felt at first like relief. No more conflict, no more unseen demands, only the familiar weight of an ordinary world. Yet the silence that followed was not peace, it was empty. Days passed, and with each passing hour, something within him grew dim, as though a light once kindled had been deliberately extinguished. The world seemed flatter, colder, stripped of meaning. Even his own thoughts echoed without depth. Lucas, who had once stood at the threshold of something vast, now felt confined within the narrow walls of his own understanding. Then came the night. No dream announced it, no warning prepared him. It was in the stillest hour, when even his strength to resist had failed, that the darkness reached its deepest point. And in that depth, when he had nothing left to offer, not even belief, something broke open. Not outwardly, but within. A presence, immediate and undeniable, flooded his being, not as vision, but as reality itself. It did not ask permission, it did not argue, it simply was. And within that presence came a knowing so clear, so absolute, it silenced every doubt. "I have never left you." Lucas fell to his knees, not in fear but in recognition. The truth did not erase his failure, it embraced it. What he had abandoned had not abandoned him. What he had doubted had remained steadfast. In the place of his deepest collapse, he did not find judgment, but an unwavering presence. What followed was not a sudden triumph proclaimed before men, but a quiet and deliberate transformation wrought in the hidden chambers of the soul. Lucas did not awaken as a different man in form, yet something within him had been irrevocably altered. The fear that once governed his steps no longer held dominion. It had not vanished entirely, but it no longer commanded him. Where doubt had once spoken with authority, it now lingered only as a distant echo, unable to overcome the certainty that had taken root within him. He rose from that night not with pride, but with a steadiness that bore the mark of something greater than resolve. His strength was no longer drawn from his own understanding, but from a quiet trust that did not demand constant proof. It was as though an unseen foundation had been laid beneath him, firm, immovable, enduring beyond circumstance. Those who knew him began to notice, though few could name what had changed. His words were fewer, yet carried weight. His presence, once troubled, now bore a calm that neither invited nor resisted attention, but simply was. He did not argue as before, nor did he seek to convince through force of reasoning. Instead, he listened, truly listened, and when he spoke, it was with a clarity that seemed to reach beyond the surface of things. It was then that others began to come. Not in great numbers nor with open declarations, but quietly drawn by something they could not explain. A man burdened by regret found himself speaking to Lucas without knowing why. A woman, weary from unseen struggles, lingered in his presence longer than she intended. To each, Lucas offered no grand doctrine, no elaborate defense. He spoke simply, yet with a depth that did not belong to mere words. "You are not abandoned," he would say, not as repetition, but as truth lived. And though some turned away, unable or unwilling to receive it, others remained changed in ways as subtle and profound as his own. Lucas understood then that his transformation was not for himself alone. The light he had encountered was not meant to be contained, but carried, yet he bore it without arrogance, for he knew well the cost of doubt, the weight of despair. He did not stand above others, but among them steady, unshaken, and quietly certain. Thus, the man who once questioned in darkness now walked with purpose, not as one who possessed all answers, but as one who had found the source from which they flowed. The calling did not come as a command carved in thunder, but as a quiet certainty that settled within Lucas like an inextinguishable flame. He understood now. What had been given to him was not meant to remain hidden in silence. The voice, the trials, the breaking, and the renewal, each had formed a path, not only for his own awakening, but for others still wandering in the dark. He walked again among people, yet no longer as one seeking validation or fearing rejection. The world had not softened. Doubt still ruled many hearts, and voices of disbelief rose just as before. Some listened and turned away. Others questioned him with sharp words, testing the strength of what he carried. Yet Lucas did not retreat. For the fear that once bound him had lost its hold, replaced by a steady and enduring peace. He did not claim to be chosen above others, nor did he speak as one who possessed power of his own. Instead, he bore witness quietly, faithfully to the presence that had never abandoned him. In marketplaces, along worn paths, in moments both ordinary and unseen, he spoke words that carried a weight beyond their simplicity. "There is one who sees you," he would say, even now. Some dismissed him, others lingered, unsettled by a truth they could not easily deny. And so the light moved not as spectacle, but as something living, passing from one soul to another. At the close of each telling, Lucas would pause, as though listening to something beyond the moment, and his gaze would rest not on a single person, but as if upon all who might yet hear. "If you are hearing this, then it is not by chance," he would say, his voice neither urgent nor soft, but certain. "This message is not mine alone. It is meant for you." At its core, this story speaks to a truth many people quietly wrestle with. Life will inevitably bring loss, confusion, and moments when faith feels distant or even broken. Like Lucas, we often search for certainty in people, achievements, or control, only to discover how fragile those foundations can be. The deeper lesson is not about avoiding hardship, but learning where to anchor ourselves when everything else fails. Growth begins when we confront our doubts honestly instead of hiding from them, and when we remain open to guidance even when it does not come in the way we expect. The story also reminds us that transformation rarely happens in comfort. It is often born in struggle, reflection, and the courage to keep moving forward despite fear. For both young people navigating identity and older individuals carrying responsibility, the message is clear. You are not defined by your lowest moment. When you choose resilience, integrity, and a willingness to grow, you begin to step into a purpose greater than your pain, and that purpose can not only rebuild your life, but also become a light for others. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please like and comment 1 if you find the story meaningful. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to follow more similar stories. See you in the next part.